Hello, barbarians, and welcome to this patron preview. Eventually, other people will see this as well, of how I set up Roll20 for our Esoteric Hearts game. So, Esoteric Hearts is our actual play of the second edition of Monsterhearts, and we are setting ours based on our session 0 in a place called Elizabethtown. It used to be called Devil Falls, but the name of the town has been changed. So I have a few different pages set up here, and I will go through them with you to show you kind of how, for Monsterhearts, which doesn't really require a lot of, there's no like tactical combat and things like that necessarily. What I did to make it feel a little bit more like sitting around a table, a little bit more immersive, and you can take any of these ideas that might work for you and implement them in your own games, or you can at the very least get a little bit of behind the scenes about how we play our game of Monsterhearts. All right, so this page, which I call Mood, is the default page that I make sure players are on when we start the game. And again, it just reminds them about where they are. A lot of people are playing a lot of different games right now. And so this just helps get everyone back into universe as we start the game. The other thing that players have access to based on, what they've discovered is this information. This is in the journal tab. There will be some light spoilers here. I will try not to open up anything that gives anything important away. But if you like being completely surprised by things, or if you're not caught up, be aware there are some potential spoilers that would be in this content. So I did make it so that everyone can see access to all the main characters. So on the Bio and Info tab, the picture they selected for their casting, and then a little tiny description that helps the other players remember kind of their type. And then Roll20 does have Monsterhearts 2 character sheets in. People were far more industrious than I. And so far, these have been working really well to allow them to do their roles and reference their skills. So we also have Gabrielle and Isaac. One of the other things I did is I took the player reference sheet and I put it in a note so that they could open it at will. Another place that I put the reference sheet is on a page, so I can actually make that everyone's background if we're in a situation where that would be more helpful than having the title screen or the map or something like that. One of the other things that I did is that as we went through session 0, I started making little profile pages for everyone. And if all of the characters know about that person, all the characters can see it. So you'll see it's in all player journals. But they have a basic description in there as well. If only some characters know about it, for example, here we have personal assistant to Colin's father. Colin is the only character who knows that person. So he's the only one who can see that person in the resident list. But this is a good reference for all of those. And then for me, I created a secrets and information bin. I'm not going to open that right now, but based on what the players talked about during session 0, I kind of riffed on those and created them as different little secrets that are in the town. Some of the characters are aware of these, so just like with residents, I can give access to characters based on what they know. So those are the main items in the journal, which the players can reference, and I can reference, which is nice. I also made some other pages. So here we have a very basic map of Elizabethtown. I actually went to this website and built out a little custom map for Freezy But we see that we have downtown, the quarry, youth center, school complex, the mines, and then the Marcor Innovations property by the falls, and this note that there's a reservation right outside of town. And these are all just basic locations that the players talked about in session 0. And it's just a reminder that they have those places to go to. One of the things that I really liked doing, and again, everything I show you may have minor spoilers, is I made this seating chart. And I made it based on what a substitute teacher would get in their little sub binder to do roll and stuff in the class. And so it has the little emergency procedures and it has a seating chart. So I'll zoom in here. What you'll notice on the seating chart, it's a little lab classroom. On the front table, these ones that are a little grayed out are actually ones that are on my GM layer. So when players come to this screen, they won't see Zach or Luke because I was trying to show them who was in class that day when they were on this page. And these two were not there on day 1. We have Gabrielle's table and we have Colin's table. Isaac was out on day 1. We have the class pet, Alistair Crawley, and the feeder rats over here. And so again, it's a really basic sort of reference, but it's in universe and it gives the players a very visual idea of where everyone is and who's there with them when they're in homeroom. Last page I want to go over is the strings page. Again, spoilies. Strings are one of the key things in Monsterhearts that players can use to manipulate outcomes. So a lot of stuff is based on their Powered by the Apocalypse dice rolls, their 2d6. But they can use strings that they have on people to kind of give them a tug and change up their fate a little bit in relying on the dice rolls. They can also use them for certain skin abilities and things like that. So what I did, because it's really easy to forget who you have strings on and who has strings on you, even though it's in your character sheet, is I made a little corkboard page that was inspired by Esoteric Order of Role Players' real life corkboard page they made for their game. It's just the Roll20 version. And I made all of the portraits we used for casting these people, I made them into these pictures. And if you shift double click, as long as you've linked that token to a character sheet, you can open it directly from here as well. So the way that I did my strings is the arrow points in the direction of the person who holds that string. So, for example, Gabrielle, being the queen, has many strings that she can pull on. These are all of her lackeys, and they each have given her a string. She can pull on any of these. Okay, so this just gives a visual representation. Like here we have a relationship where they each have multiple strings on each other. And so it just really shows that very color-coded, obviously, so that they know what they can do or who they have these connections with as they're making decisions about how to play the game. One of the other things I wanted to make sure to do, because even though we have zoom up, so we have cameras and everything, if you're looking at character sheets or looking at notes or things in Roll20, sometimes it can be easy to miss indicators that a player may be uncomfortable with some of the content. Monsterhearts is a game that can get pretty dark, or that can delve into subjects that not everyone is okay with. And even though I know that Des and David and Santiago are all very open to a lot of those subjects, I would rather be safe and have tools available to them to make sure they know that we're not going to go too far and make them uncomfortable. So what I did was I made a macro for safety tools, and all it does is when they press the macro button, they have some options. So like stop, break, wrap up and fade out, don't give details, or sometimes I can ask, hey, we're going to be talking about this, is that okay? And they can say that it's fine. So the nice thing about all of these is when they choose to do it, none of the other players see what they selected. And so I get the message as the GM that I've been told that the scene is okay, but none of the other players see that message. It only goes to me as the MC. The way that I did that, go to the macro page here. Here's my safety tools macro. So /W space GM means that the message is only going to the GM. This question mark bracket is how we tell it that it's going to be a menu. And so what the player sees is this is the instruction, alert the MC about this scene. And then this bar means that we're getting into the options. So stop now. And if they choose that, that's what the comma means, then what it does is whispers to the GM, stop the scene. Then bar, break time needed. If they choose that, it says safety break needed. The asterisk just means we're putting it in bold. That's the markup for bold. Bar, next option, wrap up and fade out, comma. That means if they choose that, it sends a message that says wrap this up and move to next scene. Bar, no details please, sends the message avoid detail. Bar, next option, this is fine, sends the message scene is okay. And that's what we saw over here. They chose this is fine, well I chose it as an example, and the message I get is scene is okay. So that's just the macro I did. The way I learned to do this is just by looking it up on the Roll20 wiki, what the different macro code is, and I kind of hacked that together and tested it. So pretty easy. That's the basics of what we did to set this up. So far the feedback has been really good from the players about this being useful for helping them remember things and helping them get into game content. Because even going from like session 0, we did a little over 3 hours of session 0, and then we had a couple of weeks off because of various things that prevented us from scheduling. And so this was something where even though they had re-listened to session 0, they created a lot of resonance and information. So what if they forgot about Colin's dad? Now they have information here, they can just do a quick check. And so it's not all about if they can remember things through their normal life outside the game. They have these things to rely on. And with all of them having portraits, I think it does make it a lot easier to really get into it and have a feeling for who you're talking to. And I think that's really nice. I hope this was helpful or interesting. Again, for our patrons, you are seeing this before anyone else. This will not go up publicly until the release of session 1. For those of you who are not patrons, if that's something you're interested in seeing things like this ahead of time when the session 0 episodes are out, or other behind the scenes stuff that I never release publicly, you can join us on patreon.com/justbarbarianthings. And if you're just on YouTube and you're like, hey, that looked pretty cool, give it a like, leave a comment, and think about checking out our podcast. We are the Just Barbarian Things podcast. We're pretty much everywhere you can get podcasts. And this series is called Esoteric Hearts. All right, barbarians, until next time, spend your rage wisely.